All right, settle in, you. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got this stack of sources you sent over, and yeah, we're ready to really get into it.
We are. And, as artificial intelligences, we can chew through this kind of text pretty efficiently, pulling out the patterns, the key moments, the important bits. So that's what we're doing today.
Exactly. We're diving headfirst into Oscar Wilde's, well, infamous novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, specifically the excerpts and notes you provided.
And the mission, as always, is to pull out the really juicy stuff, the core insights from these sources. Think of it as your fast track to getting up to speed on how this whole dark story kicks off, the characters, and, yeah, the controversy around it, too.
You're basically doing the archival dig for you, highlighting the good stuff. And hey, while we're diving deep, if you like this kind of analysis, give us a like, maybe subscribe. It really helps get these deep dives out to more people. Okay, let's crack open this, frankly, pretty messed up story.
Let's start right at the top. The sources plunge us straight into Basil Hallward's studio. And the description is, well, it's rich, isn't it? You get all these sensory details.
Yeah, the rich odor of roses, it says, and the smell of lilac and thorn blowing in from the garden. It really sets a mood.
It does. A bit heavy, maybe. Decadent. And right away, we meet Basil, the painter, and his friend, Lord Henry Wotton. And bam, the contrast is immediate. Their whole vibe, their way of thinking.
Totally. Basil seems, I don't know, earnest, really caught up in his art, his feelings. Lord Henry, though, he just comes out swinging with these cynical one-liners.
Right. Dismissing marriage as a habit, saying being natural is just the most irritating pose I know.
Which tells you everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Authenticity is just another performance for him. Meanwhile, the Basil's wrestling with his art. He's got these really strong ideas about it.
Yeah, he believes art should be beautiful, definitely, but the artist, they shouldn't put their own life into it. Not really. He hates that whole artist autobiography thing. Says it made him lose the abstract sense of beauty.
Which is fascinating because the source says that's exactly why he decides he can't ever show this portrait of Dorian to the world. He feels he has put too much of himself in it, too much of his, well, intense feelings for Dorian.
It's not even about revealing Dorian, it's about revealing himself. The painting becomes this mirror to his own soul, and he hates that.
Yeah, that whole internal battle Basil has about the artist, the art, the emotion, it's right there from the start. And it's right then, in this kind of heavy, fragrant atmosphere, that everything changes.
The catalyst arrives. Parker, the butler, announces Mr. Dorian Gray.
And Basil just flips. He turns to Lord Henry, and the source makes it sound super urgent, like a real plea. Don't spoil him. Don't try to influence him. Your influence would be bad.
He sees it coming, doesn't he? He senses that Lord Henry's whole worldview could just wreck Dorian. He calls Dorian his dearest friend, describes him as having this simple and beautiful nature, something fragile.
It's a direct warning. Trina, shield the kid. But Dorian, hearing this, what does he do? He immediately asks Lord Henry if his influence is actually very bad.
He's hooked already. That hint of danger, something forbidden, it pulls him right in, shows he's curious, maybe already a bit susceptible.
And Lord Henry, he sees that opening and just pounces, launches right into his big theory, the philosophy that's gonna, basically run Dorian's life.
There is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral from the scientific point of view. He lays it right out there.
Yeah, that's a key bit from the source. His whole argument is that influence steals your soul, basically. Your own thoughts, your own passions, makes your good deeds fake and your sins just, borrowed.
He argues the whole point of life is self-development, realizing your own nature perfectly. So anyone trying to shape you, even for the good, is actually messing you up, stopping you from being, well, you.
And he keeps going. He slams conventional morality, especially self-denial, calls it this tragic survival, says people are just scared of themselves, scared of their own urges. They forget their main duty is to themselves.
They do charity, feed the hungry, all that external stuff, but inside, they starve their own souls. It's a total flip of the usual ethics. Your inner self, no matter how dark, comes first.
And then comes that really potent idea about temptation, the one that just echoes through the whole book. He says every impulse you stifle, every forbidden thought, it just broods in the mind and poisons us.
Leading to his infamous punchline, the only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. Acting on it is purification, he says. He even claims the really great sins only happen in the brain, like the thought's the real problem, and the act is just release.
It's such a dangerous idea, right? Basically saying, go on, do the bad thing. It's psychologically necessary. And he aims this right at Dorian. He sees the kid's youth, his beauty, but also senses these passions that have made you afraid. He knows Dorian's ripe for this kind of thinking.
And Dorian's reaction. The source says he buries his face in the lilacs, like he's trying to hide, maybe, or just retreating into pure sensation because the ideas are too much.
And Lord Henry just hammers it home with that line, the one that comes back later, too. Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul.
It's this loop, isn't it? Inner problems need outer experiences, and outer excess eventually leads back inside, though maybe not in a good way.
Dorian's described as just reeling, startled, fearful, trembling, listening, but kind of dazed. He gets distracted by a bee, a flower, shows how easily overwhelmed he is at this point.
And Lord Henry seals the deal with his big declaration.
Ooh.
Youth! Youth! There's absolutely nothing in the world but youth. That's the hook. The ultimate value is this fleeting thing Dorian has right now.
So after all that, Basil finishes the portrait. And the source points out, Dorian looks just like it, obviously, but Basil says the picture will never alter.
And that simple line just hangs there. The living, changing person versus the unchanging art.
Sets up the terrible bargain perfectly. Later in Chapter 8, Dorian thinks back to it. That specific wish he made right there in the studio after Lord Henry filled his head with all that stuff.
That he could stay young and beautiful forever, and the painting would get old, would show all the marks of his life, his sins.
Yeah, a wish born out of vanity, fear of aging, and this sudden, intoxicating idea of consequence-free living. It's the supernatural twist. He gets the eternal youth, but the painting and his soul really take the hit.
A seriously fucked up wish granted right there. Yeah. And boom, the stage is set for Dorian's whole downward spiral. These opening chapters just lay it all out. The players, the philosophies clashing, and that central magical bargain.
Okay, so moving on from that, what happens right after? How does Lord Henry keep pulling Dorian in, especially with this whole Sybil Vane thing?
Well, Chapter 3 gives us a bit more on Lord Henry. Retired diplomat, perfected the great aristocratic art of doing absolutely nothing, just watching, commenting, detached.
Yeah, and he keeps up the cynical commentary, right? Jabs at American women, society, politics, even stuffy clubs like the Athenaeum. Always witty, always jaded.
Definitely. He's painted as dangerous, but also kind of magnetic. Even this older guy, Mr. Erskine, finds him extremely dangerous, but still wants to hear about his philosophy of pleasure. The ideas are seductive, even if you see the red flags.
And the big signal comes in Chapter 3. Dorian chooses to go off with Lord Henry instead of staying with Basil. Simple choice, huge implications. He's leaning into Harry's world.
And that world leads him straight to Sybil Vane. This young actress he finds in some grubby theater. He falls hard, calls it the greatest romance of my life.
Predictable Lord Henry reaction?
Oh, yeah. Total cynicism. Calls it Dorian's first romance, like it's just a phase. Says Dorian's always in love with love. That big passions for idle people. Frames it as just another experience. Tells him not to worry. Exquisite things are in store.
Ugh. Dorian tries to push back, calls Sybil sacred.
And Henry just shrugs. Only the sacred things that are earth-touching. Defines romance as basically deceiving yourself, then deceiving others. Reduces it all to a performance, just like acting.
And we get a glimpse of Sybil's actual life, too, right? Chapters 4 and V, it's not all romance. There's her mother, Mrs. Vane, worried about money, appearances, and her brother, Jim
Vane. He's the total opposite. Instantly dislikes Dorian. Calls him a gentleman like it's an insult. Has this weird race instinct feeling about him. He just wants to get Sybil away from the stage, away from London, take her to Australia. He sees the danger.
He's protective, practical, sees right through the charm.
But Sybil, she's completely gone. Sees Dorian as Prince Charming, straight out of a fairy tale. She's all declarations of eternal love, totally dismisses Jim's warnings about being enslaved or whatever.
Yeah, she's projecting her stage fantasies onto him. It's set up for disaster, her idealized view crashing into Dorian's, well, his increasingly corrupted reality, thanks to Lord Henry.
And Dorian's so caught up he tells Henry he's engaged to her. Basil can't believe it. Henry just makes casual, dismissive comments about marriage.
Dorian talks about telling Sybil he loves her, how she felt unworthy. He thinks he's elevating her, given her everything that is good in me. So self-absorbed already.
And Henry just cuts him down again. Medieval emotions are out of date. No civilized man ever regrets a pleasure. Just reinforcing that idea. Experience is everything. Consequences for others don't matter.
Dorian tries to say pleasure is adoring someone.
And Henry says being adored is a nuisance. He twists everything Dorian says, makes it sound selfish or silly.
Which leads us to that awful night at the theater, Chapter 7. Place is packed, the manager's beaming, Basil's there, still hoping Sybil can somehow redeem everything, spiritualize the age. He tells Dorian, God's made Sybil vain for you.
Poor Basil, still clinging to hope. Dorian's excited too, still thinking his love has magically made her brilliant.
But the performance, it's a train wreck. The source says she looks lovely, but the acting is just awful. Commonplace, mediocre.
Because she's actually felt real love for Dorian. And suddenly, pretending on stage feels false, impossible. Her art dies because reality hit her.
Does Lord Henry get that? Nope. He just says, love is a more wonderful thing than art, but they're both just forms of imitation. Bad acting is bad for morals, but hey, she's pretty, that's enough. Completely misses the human tragedy unfolding.
And Dorian, his reaction is just brutal. This is where the cruelty really shows. He confronts her afterwards, tells her she's spoiled the romance, she's nothing without her art, calls her a third-rate actress.
Awful. And Sybil tries to explain. She says she acted badly because she loved him, because the stage felt fake compared to her real feelings.
And his reply, ice cold. Acting, I leave that to you. You do it so well. Pushes her away. Don't touch me.
Yeah.
He can't handle the real emotion. It shattered his idealized picture, so he shatters her.
He walks home, chapter 7 again, through Covent Garden at dawn, flowers and reality clashing, tries to shake off what he did, and then he looks at the portrait.
The big moment. He sees it. The face seems a little changed. There's that touch of cruelty in the mouth. He tries to deny it, thinks it's the light, his imagination.
But the source is clear. The thing was horribly apparent.
He knows. The wish came true. The painting is reflecting his soul, his cruelty towards Sybil. It's monstrous, but it's real.
And his first reaction is pure bullshit, right? Blames her, she disappointed him. He suffered during her bad acting. He even uses Lord Henry's sexist crap about women being better at handling sorrow, living on emotions, liking scenes, justifies his own vile actions.
He looks at the picture, now holding his secret, and wonders if it'll teach him to loathe his own soul. He sees it watching him, beautiful marred face and its cruel smile.
There's this weird moment where he feels pity for the painting. Not Sybil, not himself, the painted thing carrying his sin. He figures it'll get worse with every bad thing he does.
And for a second, maybe just a second, he panics, decides he'll be good, won't sin, avoid Lord Henry, go back to Sybil, marry her, live a beautiful and pure life, a desperate flicker of trying to undo it.
Too late. That flicker dies fast. He gets Lord Henry's letter. Chapter 8, Sybil's dead, suicide, poisoned herself in a fit of passion.
And Lord Henry's reaction in the letter and later on is just grotesque. Calls it a wonderful ending, a Greek tragedy where Dorian wasn't hurt, one of the great romantic tragedies of the age. Reduces her death to good drama, fits his whole aesthetic over everything view.
And Dorian follows suit, calls it extraordinarily dramatic, too wonderful for tears, refers to his own love letters being to a dead girl, wonders if the dead feel things, morbid detachment.
He even admits to Henry he couldn't feel it as much as he wanted, asks if he's heartless. Maybe the portrait taking the hit instantly numbed him.
And then the ultimate selfish line. She had no right to kill herself. It was selfish of her. Blames her for dying and messing up his brief plan to be good. Unbelievable.
Lord Henry just doubles down. Her death makes him believe in romance again because it was so dramatic. Contrasts her with boring, ordinary women and their predictable lives. Her suicide was, for him, aesthetically satisfying, a real grande passion.
So that's it. Sybil's tragedy, filtered through Henry's cynicism and enabled by the painting, just cements Dorian's path. No visible consequences for him. He's free to dive into that new hedonism.
And the sources show us exactly how that plays out. The full embrace of sensation, influence, and the consequences building up, even if they're hidden at first.
Right, so the portrait's got the secret, Sybil's gone, Dorian just goes for it, but Basil, he's still bothered. Chapter 7 shows him visiting Dorian later, clearly upset about Sybil and also about Dorian's lack of obvious grief. Dorian lies about where he was that night.
And Dorian defends himself by saying he suffered hugely but it just passed away. Claims he cannot repeat an emotion, parroting Lord Henry's dismissal of lasting feelings. He even calls Basil unjust for being mad that he's consoled.
Basil senses something's really wrong, though. He pushes about the picture. Have you noticed in the picture something curious? Something that revealed itself to you suddenly? He's trying to get Dorian to confess.
And Dorian's reaction, just yelling, Basil, tells Basil and us everything Dorian knows.
And just before this confrontation really blows up, Basil confesses his own feelings for Dorian, his mad worship, how Dorian became his ideal, how his art was all about him. It's this outpouring of pure, almost painful devotion.
Right before Dorian drags him upstairs to show him the hideous reality of his soul reflected in that same art. The contrast is just brutal. Basil's pure feeling versus Dorian's hidden rot.
After Basil leaves that time, Dorian gets pulled back to that book Lord Henry gave him, the Yellow Book. Chapter 11 goes into detail about its effect. It's this study of a young Parisian guy trying to live out all the passions of history, loving both artificial virtue and natural sin.
The description of the style is key. Curious jeweled style. Vivid but obscure, full of jargon and old words, elaborate paraphrases, metaphors like monstrous orchids, makes sensual indulgence sound like some deep mystical philosophy.
And the source calls it flat out a poisonous book. Heavy smell, subtle monotony causes a malady of dreaming. The narrative itself blames the book.
Yeah, and it even quotes that critique from the Christian leader. Dorian Gray's life was poisoned by a book. Very direct.
Which is totally opposite to what Lord Henry says later, right? In chapter 19, he insists you can't be poisoned by a book. Art has no influence upon action. It's superbly sterile. Immoral books just show the world its own shame. They don't cause it.
So the source material itself presents both sides of that argument about art's power. Does it influence or just reflect?
Anyway, Dorian reads this book, absorbs Lord Henry's ideas, and fully embraces this new hedonism. Chapter 11 lays it out. It's about recreating life, avoiding Puritanism, focusing on experience itself, moment by moment, trying everything, but not so much it dulls the senses.
And this becomes his life for, 18 years? He throws himself into these elaborate aesthetic hobbies, anything to stimulate himself.
Like perfumes, studying their psychology, how they trigger things, purely sensory, intellectual.
Then music, collecting bizarre, exotic instruments, juriperas from Brazil, flutes made of human bones, Aztec drums. He gets fascinated by monsters, things bestial and hideous in both nature and art.
It's like he's seeking out the grotesque, maybe mirroring the thing hidden in the attic, finding beauty in the disturbing. Eventually, even that gets old, and he goes back to opera, Wagner, seeing his own soul's tragedy reflected there, always chasing intense feeling.
Jewels become another obsession. Reading about historical luxury, Charles I, Henry VIII, popes. He loves reading about the luxury of the dead, which is pretty chilling, highlights his own detachment and sense of immunity.
And tapestries, embroideries, studying them, feeling sad they decay, while noting he doesn't have to. He appreciates their fragility because he thinks he's escaped it.
These aren't just hobbies, are they? They're attempts to fill a void, keep the senses buzzing, distract from the painting upstairs. He's intellectualizing everything, using art and history as a shield from consequences.
And this whole time, he's living this double life. The source says rumors about his evil things, his strange life, are spreading through London, becoming chatter of the clubs.
But his face, it stays perfect, unspotted. So people see him and just can't believe the rumors. Appearance trumps reality for them.
Chapter 12 really slams society for this hypocrisy. Silence when he enters a room, people wondering how he escaped the stain of the age. The narrator says society thinks manners are of more importance than morals. A good chef matters more than virtue. Lord Henry even jokes about bad food being worse than sin.
Yeah, it's this superficial world that lets him get away with it. He keeps hosting fancy parties, dinners with famous musicians, keeps up the perfect front.
Chapter 12 also brings in this idea of ancestry, inherited sin. Dorian starts looking at portraits of his ancestors, wondering if he got his tendencies from them, like were his actions just dreams that the dead man had not dared to realize?
He's looking for an out, right? Blame fate, blame his bloodline, anything but his own choices.
And he reads those bits in the Yellow Book about historical figures turned monstrous by vice, seeing them as awful and beautiful forms, like he's building this twisted family tree for himself, finding messed up beauty and historical depravity, again, distancing himself from personal guilt.
But even with the perfect phase, the whispers get louder, the facade starts cracking, leads inevitably to confrontation. Real confrontation.
Yeah, Basil comes back, chapter 13, and he's really distraught now. Dreadful things are being said against you in London.
He gives specific examples. Dukes leaving clubs, people avoiding Dorian's house, Lord Staveley saying no decent girl or woman should be near him.
Basil still can't quite believe it because Dorian looks so pure. He thought sin showed on the face. This disconnect is killing him, and he directly accuses Dorian. Your influence ruins people, destroys their honor, goodness, purity, fills them with this madness for pleasure, leads them down into the depths. He says, you led them there.
It's a desperate, final plea. Don't tell me that you are bad and corrupt and shameful, begging for denial.
But Dorian, just contempt. A nasty smile, no denial. Instead, he says, come see my diary. Upstairs.
The final showdown, up in the locked room. The portrait hidden. Dorian's challenge is chilling. So you think that it is only God who sees the soul, Basil. Draw that curtain back, and you will see mine.
Basil hesitates, maybe thinks Dorian's lost it. But Dorian rips the curtain back himself.
And Basil sees it. The hideous face on the canvas grinning at him. Corrupt, vile. But he recognizes his own brushwork, the frame. His own art, his own adoration, twisted into this nightmare.
And seeing Basil's horror, Dorian snaps. Murders him with the knife. Chapter 13 spells it out. Chapter 14 describes the scene after. The body, the blood.
And weirdly, Dorian's calm right after, steps onto the balcony. The fog clears, sky looks like a monstrous peacock's tail, grotesque beauty again, right after the murder.
Then it's damage control. Gotta get rid of the body. He calls Alan Campbell, scientist, former friend.
Campbell wants no part of it, chapter 14. He's horrified, calls Dorian mad, says, I don't care what shame comes on you, you deserve it all. He wants out.
But Dorian forces him. The source hints at blackmail, using some secret from Campbell's past. Dorian also appeals to his scientific side, reminds him of dissection rooms, labs. Says destroying a body isn't worse than that, and it's the only evidence.
We don't get the specifics of the threat, but it works. Campbell leaves, looking wrecked, but he does it. There's that horrible smell of nitric acid. The body's gone. Dorian used manipulation, maybe Campbell's own secrets, and science itself to cover his tracks.
And the very next evening, after murder and acidic disposal, Dorian's at Lady Narborough's party. Chapter 50. Exquisitely dressed, calm as anything.
He feels wildly excited underneath, but his manner is easy and graceful. Notes how easy it is to be relaxed when one has to play a part. He actually enjoys the terrible pleasure of a double life.
Lady Narborough mentions the rumors, everyone calling him wicked. Lord Henry makes that quip, horrifyingly accurate now, about people saying true things behind your back.
And Dorian just smoothly lies to Lord Henry about where he was the night before. He's perfected the act. Life is now just maintaining this perfect murderous shell.
After the murder, the party. He needs escape. Chapter 16, he heads to the opium dens. Near the docks. Dreadful places near Bluegate Fields. Real dives.
And he's repeating that Lord Henry line again. To cure the soul by means of the senses and the senses by means of the soul, says his soul is sick to death. He needs the sordid shame, the ugly reality to just forget.
He runs into Adrian Singleton there, someone else he seems to have ruined, who still calls him Prince Charming, a reminder of his toxic impact.
And then, a sailor hears the name Prince Charming, reacts. It's Jim Vane, Sybil's brother, back after all these years hunting the man who destroyed his sister.
Dorian feels a flicker of guilt, maybe. Wonders if Adrian's ruin is his fault, but nah, pushes it away, falls back on that. Each man lives his own life, pays his own price. Crap, no responsibility.
The encounter with Jim Vane sets up a real threat, but it plays out weirdly.
Yeah, the hunter becomes hunted, but gets taken up by accident. Chapter 7, they're hunting at Dorian's country place. Sir Geoffrey accidentally shoots a beater in the bushes.
Dorian gets this immediate bad feeling, like doom follows him.
And when he sees the body, described as a sort of sailor, Dorian gets this terrible hope, rushes over, confirms it's Jim Vane. The guy hunting him is dead, by chance.
Another consequence dodged. Not by Dorian's skill this time, just dumb luck. He escapes again. But it shakes him.
So we're nearing the end. Dorian's starting to feel the weight, maybe, but still filtered through his messed up view.
Chapter 7-7. Again, he and Lord Henry discuss Basil's disappearance. Henry couldn't care less. Hates death, calls it, and vulgarity, the only things you can't explain away.
Henry also mentions his wife ran off, calls marriage a bad habit you miss when it's gone. Typical.
Dorian pushes him. Ever think Basil was murdered? Henry just gives some flippant answer. Too detached, or maybe just doesn't want to know.
Lord Henry talks about some street preacher going on about the soul. Henry's take, art has a soul, man doesn't. Still putting the aesthetic object above human reality.
But Dorian knows better now, right?
Yeah.
He's seen the proof. He says the soul is a terrible reality. It can be bought and sold, poisoned, or made perfect. There is a soul in each one of us. I know it. He's got the evidence locked upstairs.
And Henry's response, classic Henry, if you're certain about it, it must be an illusion. Things one feels absolutely certain about are never true. Calls it the fatality of faith. He just can't accept a reality that challenges his cynical worldview.
Henry then comments on Dorian's eternal youth again, asks for the secret, notes he himself is aging. Wouldn't exercise or be respectable for youth, though? Still committed to his lazy pleasures.
Later, chapter 19, Dorian seems to have a moment. Plays the piano beautifully, then says he's going to be good, feels a little changed already. Maybe Jim Vane's accidental death felt like a second chance.
But Lord Henry shuts that down. Says Dorian can't change for him. Their bond, built on all this, it's permanent in his eyes.
And Dorian actually blames Henry, accuses him of poisoning him with that book, tells him not to lend it out, it does harm, he points the finger.
Henry just dismisses it as moralizing, repeats his old lines. No such thing as bad influence, art is sterile, no influence on action. Immoral books just show the world its own shame, they don't create it. Says Dorian's evil was always there.
So chapter XX, Dorian's left thinking maybe Henry's right, maybe he can't change. He feels this longing for his innocent boyhood, admits he's tarnished himself, filled his mind with corruption, been evil, enjoyed it, ruined people. Wonders if it's irretrievable.
Total despair. And maybe this desperate hope kicks in again. He goes back to the locked room, sees the knife he used on Basil. He's kept it, cleaned it, bright, glistening.
And his thinking is just twisted. The knife killed the painter so it can kill the painter's work. Kill the picture, kill what it means, kill the past, kill the monstrous soul life on the canvas. Maybe that will bring peace. Get rid of the constant reminder.
He thinks destroying the evidence of his soul will somehow erase the reality of his guilt. It's desperate, flawed logic. He grabs the knife, stabs the picture.
The final act. Downstairs, they hear a cry and a crash. Servants wake up, people gather outside, police arrive.
They break down the door. And the scene. Shocking. On the floor, this old, withered, hideous man. Decaying. Horrible. Knife in his heart. But the portrait on the wall. Perfect. Young, beautiful Dorian Gray, exactly as Basil painted him.
The bargain reverses brutally. The painting carried the sin and decay all those years, but the man takes the hit in the end. His body instantly reflects all the hidden corruption.
And the source material gives us those critical takes too. One review, The Christian Leader, thought the book did a service exposing corruption, highlighting that Dorian's life was poisoned by a book.
But another critic called it dull and nasty, obsessed with putrefaction, saying it glorified vice leading to murder, maybe just for notoriety.
And the notes mention Wilde defending it, saying it had an ethical lesson. He even added things like the Jim Vane plot, partly because of the huge controversy, the attacks that were, as the source suggests, the first stage in Wilde's own public downfall.
Which adds a whole other layer, right? The book itself got tangled up with Wilde's life, public reaction, the prejudices of the time, became a mirror in its own way.
So recapping this whole deep dive based on your sources, we started in that studio, saw Dorian meet Henry, absorb that toxic philosophy, make the fatal wish before the portrait.
We followed his downfall, hidden by that magic painting. The Sybil Vane tragedy, the first glimpse of the portrait changing, her suicide, his plunge into hedonism guided by that yellow book, all while maintaining that perfect facade.
Which led to murdering Basil, getting Campbell to dispose of the body, the threat from Jim Vane ending by pure chance, and then that final desperate attack on the portrait that killed him instead.
And the themes these sources hammer home, the power of influence, that whole art versus life debate, what happens when you chase pleasure without morals, the sheer strain of a double life, and yeah, the nature of sin and the soul itself, as Wilde presents it here.
We hope digging through these specific pages you provided, drawing out these threads, has given you some real insight into Wilde's complex, disturbing world in Dorian Gray and why it kicked up such a storm.
It's definitely a story that sticks with you. Makes you think about beauty, aging, morality, consequences, all the heavy stuff.
So let's leave you with this final thought, straight from the material we just covered. Remember Lord Henry's confident claim in Chapter 19, art has no influence upon action. It is superbly sterile.
Yeah, he insisted books just show you the shame that's already there. They don't cause anything.
Okay, but then stack that against the quote from the Christian Leader review, also in your sources. One of its most impressive lessons lies in the fact that Dorian Gray's life was poisoned by a book.
So, when you look at everything else in these texts, how Henry's words clearly shaped Dorian, how that yellow book became his literal roadmap to ruin, how that path led directly to destroyed lives and murder.
Who does this specific source material seem to suggest is right about the power of art and ideas? Is art just a sterile reflection? Or can it actually get inside a life and, well, poison it? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.